Hi, everyone. We're talking air filtration. This is a live podcast and webinar here for NAFA members and anybody out there that is a NAFA member or in the air filtration industry here. So welcome. We've got a couple guests today and just wanted to introduce these guys here, and then we'll just jump into a couple slides here talking about NAFA, especially if you're not familiar with us or if you're under familiar with us. Maybe you're a member, but you don't know all the things that we do here. So first off, let's introduce our guests here. I have Brooks Wise and Matt Lacy. Hi, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hello.
All right, we're all from our respective home offices here. And Brooks and Matt Lacy, you guys are like regional senior vice presidents of your respective areas. Is that how it is?
Correct, Tony. Yes, I'm regional VP over the Southeast, located down in Mobile, Alabama.
Yes, sir. And I'm regional vice president of the West region, and I'm located in Dallas. So I've got Dallas up to Milwaukee and then all the way out west.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for joining us. We're going to talk about logistics and shipping and a big change that's coming about here. Let's start with you guys, whoever wants to answer this, but let's talk about the Ascent Global Logistics and NAFA relationship.
Got it. So Matt, I'll take that one. So Tony, This relationship started years ago, and just to kind of give you a little back history. A portion of Ascent back in the 80s started their transportation program helping trade associations such as NAFA. So the partnership has been around for numerous years, and the goal was let our transportation experts, let our relationships with the carriers, let us leverage that to help the NAFA members not only reduce freight costs, but to do things such as we're doing today where we can educate members on what's going on in the industry, things that may impact them. Not only from a rate perspective, but just a supply chain perspective in general, especially in this time such as COVID. It's been a very good partnership over the years. And just to kind of give you the scope of Ascent has grown to where we're almost $1 billion in revenue. That's both domestically, internationally, as well as our air cargo division. So there's a lot of opportunities to help customers, NAFA members, et cetera, in various modes throughout transportation. And Matt, feel free to chime in if I left off anything.
No, I think you hit it all.
Fantastic. And so we have obviously a great relationship with you guys because NAFA members can take advantage of the great rates and extra relationship that you guys have with trucking companies and shippers out there, so that they can actually get some additional discount. And of course, that helps out NAFA as well through our partnership.
Correct, Tony. There's some, obviously, we've got 30-year plus relationships with carriers. So there's obviously a pricing advantage allowing us to leverage that on the NAFA membership behalf, as well as it also provides possible carrier options that a member may not have on their own. Obviously, we do business with just about every LTL trucking carrier you see on the road, from FedEx to XPO to AAA Cooper to Estes. I mean, you name it, we do some sort of business with them. Not to mention, we're doing roughly 34,000 different truckload carriers. So that's your big mega fleet guys down to the small mom and pop carriers that run all over the country. So there's a huge cost advantage as well as carrier selection and giving, your members some additional flexibility getting freight moved across the country.
Absolutely. Okay, so with that, we kind of set the stage there. Let's talk about what's happening or what's about to happen actually tomorrow, right? So tomorrow there's going to be some changes to the motor freight classification. So let's talk about what is NMFC and why should our members or why should shippers care about what NMFC is if they're not aware of this?
Sure. So right, I'll take that one, Brooks.
Yeah. Give you the fun one.
Yes. So NMFC is your National Motor Freight Classification. And what that tells you is at what class you're shipping your freight. It tells the LTL carriers essentially the density of your freight. The number identifies the liability, the stowability, how they should handle the product. And what that allows them to do is have a better understanding for how they should charge you for your freight transportation. Obviously, the higher the classification, the more expensive your freight is. The lower the classification, the less expensive your freight is. In this particular circumstance, for example, filter stock paper is changing classification. Overall, the range of classification percentage changes could potentially change all freight that you're shipping from 17% all the way up to 55%. So depending on your transportation spend already, you could see exponentially an increase in your transportation spend based on the classification of which you're shipping within.
So what's happening? Why is this changing now? Like, what classification is like freight, or excuse me, is filter paper now, and what is it going to? And then also, what about like the non-woven and all the other stuff that kind of is related to all of this?
Yeah, so Tony, what happens, like, speaking with NMFC, everybody wonders, what is this NMFC? So you've got government officials from the Department of Transportation, you have senior executives with carriers, you have senior executives with very large shippers, and they determine, I guess, things are not being classified correctly from a handling, a stowability, liability. So they will go in and identify commodities where that needs to be adjusted. So that's what has happened with filter stock paper. So this was an item that shipped as Class 65, no matter size, weight, dimension, skidded, rolled, how it was packaged, it was Class 65. The NMFC has determined that is now going to change to either Class 92.5 or Class 150, depending on how it comes out cubic feet. And that's what impacts the rate. So all of a sudden you go from a lower class, as Matt mentioned, which would be typically a lower rate, to something that could jump up to Class 150, which could potentially double your rate. And obviously there's some variables in there, and that's kind of where our pricing team can get involved to help and determine how can we mitigate that impact. How can we reduce costs for you, not only from a rate perspective, but maybe how can we help educate you on the handling of your freight, and are you following best practices of moving that freight in order to, again, mitigate that risk to an exposure to cost.
So is there anything that like shippers, like our members, can do to, are they doing anything like unknowingly to cause their classification to be wrong? Or is that like set like by a governing body? Or I'm not sure even that what I'm asking, except for the fact I'm just wondering if there's anything they can do. Or are they somehow misclassifying, somehow putting information forward that might be costing them money?
Yeah, that's a good question, Tony. So a couple of things that they can always check on some quick tips for when you're shipping your product is the density. So basically the pounds per cubic feet of your product. Are you wasting space, or are you trying to stuff too much product into one specific part of the space when shipping? Is it packaged correctly? If it needs cushioning within the package for protection and liability of the product itself, is it plastic wrapped to the actual pallet? Does the pallet itself have space within the shipments or the boxes of which you are shipping? So you want to understand the density of what you're shipping. Additionally, the handling. How easy is it to move from an LTL terminal to another terminal, or from a truck to a terminal? What is the fragility of that packaging that you're moving, and how can that be better utilized and handled by the LTL carrier? The liability. What's the ability of the product that you're shipping for to be damaged? If you put it into some tight boxes without any cushioning or without any protection, what's the odds that the way that you wrapped it to the pallet, it could be crushed, essentially, when you talk about air filtrations and air filters specifically, if you're talking about the finished product. The ability to damage any adjacent freight during the product or during the move. Luckily, in this case, that's pretty unlikely considering the weight of the product that's coming out in the final production. But the greater liability, that often equates to a higher classification. And then the stowability. Can we move the freight? Can it be stacked? In most situations, in this case, it can't specifically be stacked. So if it is stacked on top of your product in with an air filter and it crushes it, now there's a claims process. So the stowability of not being able to stack the products within can cause can cause a higher classification, which in turn also causes a higher expenditure of transportation.
Yep. So, Tony, if you think about it from the carrier perspective a little bit, people are not knowingly doing anything that's causing this change. So obviously, simplest form, we all see trailers running up and down the road. The carrier wants to get as much freight in that trailer as they can. So as they see things that may be taking up space where could be cutting their revenue, so to speak, they could get an additional shipment in there, but they can't because this very light product is taking up more space. And that's kind of what things start trickling into, hey, should we look at the classification of this product? Should it be a different class based on how much space it's taking up and what it's doing to limitate, what they're getting on a trailer?
Fantastic. So I just brought up on the screen the frequently asked questions on freight class that you guys shared with us, and we were able to put that on our website. And so if you're listening to this after the fact, you can go to nafahq.org and you'll be able to find the FAQs. We'll leave that up here, even beyond the webinar here. But I wanted to bring attention to one thing, and it kind of ties into what you were just talking about, I think, Matt, as well. But we're talking about density and what causes the class to change. And so I was just reading that kind of very carefully, and I wanted to bring people's attention to this as you were talking about that. So can you talk a little bit about like this specific point, what causes the class to change when we talk about the weight and the dimensions? And if you're, here it says, if you're shipping pallets of fabric to two different locations and the weight is different, the two shipments will generally have different classes, which will be reflected in the price. If you guys could maybe expound on that, because I think that happens probably quite a bit, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the NMFC, it's a classification that it's actually visited upon these classifications 3 times a year by our government. And as Brooks said, often the higher up executives at some high level LTL companies. And they get together and they review the classifications. And really what they're trying to do is make sure that they understand and that we understand that there's a standardization that goes across the board for all LTL carriers to ship specific product within a specific classification so that you're not being gouged from one LTL carrier to another. And that allows companies like us to come in and also provide you the best rate through positioning other companies that we work with that may be seen as competitors of ours to give you the best rate across the board because we're able to work as one unit to the customer. And so from that perspective, the customer can come in and see the classification, understand what they're shipping, and provide that information directly to the LTL carrier. And because the classification is set by this governing body, then we're able to all standardize shipments across the board and not charge one rate, but be within the same ramifications of that rate in that MFC class number. The big picture is not that you're understanding necessarily what you're shipping as far as that specific number, because it does have so many variables. As Brooks said earlier, it can be a 92.5 or 150 class will be the new classifications. And not necessarily that you are understanding all the ins and outs of that specific shipment for the NMFC number, but the fact that we understand it and can share that information across the board with you to help you utilize the best carrier to meet your needs for the classifications of your shipments.
And Tony, just a little more on that, just to kind of give some folks some examples. So, if you take a standard skid, 40 by 48 by, let's say, 48, and it's 400 pounds, the density on that's going to be a little over 7, which is in the new classification is going to throw you at a class 150 by simply adding 100 pounds of that same shipment going to the same zip code. If it were to be 500 pounds, it actually throws you into the different class going to 92.5, which would reduce that rate. So there's different ways to do this. I mean, there could be options to where, a best practice could be, obviously, if you could ship more volume to a particular customer, obviously that would increase your density, lowering your rate and your class. So there's different ways to look at this other than just, pure rate play. Some of the handling, the amount you're shipping, et cetera, can also impact the classification you're falling off in.
And if I may, Tony, I'll just add one more point, just so everyone on the call can understand, there's 18 different classifications, 18 different NMFC numbers, and they range from 50 up to 500. So as you heard Brooks talk about the density of your classification, obviously the lower you can get that classification in this circumstance, the 92.5 is going to save you money. You guys should never be up at the 500 classification. That should never happen. Our job is to help you understand that and to catch that if there is any confusion with that. And so therefore, we can keep you at one of those two classification points at 92.5 or 150 and help you understand that with consolidation and a few other specific tips that you can utilize within your distribution centers or warehouses, that can save you ultimately that could save you money in your transportation spend.
So does it happen often? So let's say you've got somebody out there who's shipping, and they're kind of like, they've got their own network of shippers based on where they're shipping, by region or what they're shipping, the material they're shipping, and they're kind of doing it on their own, right? You've got a rock star kind of shipping coordinator, shipping manager out there, but they're kind of doing it on their own, right? They don't have a logistics company on their own. Are there times where there's a mistake between the shipping company, the shipper, our member, and the trucking company, where like something is misclassified, or you guys are catching that? Is there sometimes where there's a big, okay,
this is a whole nother can of worms. So yes, that's something that's gone on in the industry, and it's more and more prevalent here the past 3 to 5 years, where carriers inspect and reweigh 90+% of the shipments coming through their network. So they will check your weight that's on your bill of lading. They will check your classification, and they have departments set up just to do that. Since our business model has changed, the back office support in Ascent is heavily involved in we call them disputes, reways and reclassifications. It's become such a big piece of our business. It used to not be, but just the industry has changed. It's kind of a long-winded answer to your question, but it's very common. We do work with our customers to dispute these with the carriers. Some are correct. Sometimes the carrier is right. Sometimes they're not. And that's where we get involved and help get these resolved, get the invoices corrected, et cetera. The other piece of that, if the shipper is making a mistake, unknowingly, typed in the wrong weight or classing something wrong, then it's our job to help educate them. And we do the same on the carrier side. If a carrier is constantly reweighing your freight or classing it wrong, we'll educate them, bring them on site. Hey, here's what we're shipping. Why do you keep reclassing this? And get it resolved on behalf of our customer, because it costs everybody time and money to deal with those sorts of disputes and rebilling issues.
Agree. And I'll just add, you should always think of a reclass and a reweigh. And Brooks, you can correct me here if you think I'm wrong, but that's more money out of your pocket. If you're constantly getting reclassifications and reways, you're constantly spending more money. You will get charged for it.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, Tony, I've been with the organization going on about 11 years now, and at one time we had 2 or 3 people working on disputes, and now we're up to 2 shifts, and I think there's 30 people that do nothing but handle carrier disputes and incorrect invoicing between customers and carriers. So it's a huge piece of our business and everybody in the industry. I wish to say there was a way to get out of it, but it impacts everybody no matter what you're shipping, whether it's filters or nuts and bolts. Everybody has to deal with it.
Wow. Okay, so I have another question here, but before I do that, I'm going to just let people know that if you want to submit a question through the chat. I do see our questions are working. Last webinar we did, they weren't working properly. So go ahead and submit through the chat window if you've got that, or the questions, whatever you've got. Sometimes different things show up on the attendees side. So submit a question to the guys if you've got anything you'd like to know specifically, and we'll take those here as they come in. So my question is, you've got 30 people that are just doing this. So this sounds like the amount of error, I guess, that can happen pays for all of those people, and it pays it exponentially pays for itself with the shippers, right? So that's a lot of money. Like, can you give us an example without naming names, like in maybe a couple situations where, you guys caught something, like the shipper was doing something, thought everything was okay, but it ended up being like a pot of gold at the end, or a fair amount of cash.
Sure. So I can tell you on average, our audit group saves our customers about 4 to 8% by handling disputes, invoices, etc. So I've got a client in Texas was getting reweighed, probably 70% of their shipments are getting reweighed. This turns out was on the carrier side. The carrier actually wasn't clearing their scale when they were unloading that trailer. When it hit the terminal, we brought the carrier in, had some conversations because they were dead set. Our weights are right. So we took them in to the customer, and the customer sells some sealants. You can only get so much in this carton of sealant. And they're like, okay, how do we get 100 more pounds of sealant into this bucket, Mr. Carrier? And the carrier's like, okay, I get your point. Our scales are obviously wrong. We need to put some processes in place. But, during this time frame, this took about 3 months to get all this resolved. I mean, it was almost $80,000 in incorrect invoice. And it's a very large shipper, but it can have a significant impact. The big thing. So obviously, while this is going on, the carrier's not getting paid. So obviously they want to get it resolved. Customers frustrated, they want to get it resolved. So it can have some pretty significant impacts on what's going on when you start getting into these reclasses and reweighs. And Matt, you may have some other examples you can share.
Yeah, we recently had a customer that very similar. It was a situation where the carrier was incorrect. Their scales needed to be reset, and they were off not significantly in the weight, but because of the amount of volume that we were running through, there was a significant amount of total weight that was being charged. So anytime that there's that reweigh, like I said, oftentimes it does come back to the customer for an additional payment or an additional charge. And what happened here is we asked the carrier if they could go and reset their scales and start fresh. And they were great. They immediately contacted us to discuss the reweigh and why there was the difference in the weight and what they felt like was happening versus what we felt like. So they were kind enough to go and reset the scales. And when they did that and they reweighed it, we found out that, yes, there was this issue with the scale in and of itself, but we had to go back over, not 3 months, luckily for us, but it was about 3 weeks worth of product that was being shipped through the carrier specifically. And they were able to adjust the rate back to where it was because of the weight classification.
Tony, there's one that I work with that's located in Mississippi, and they were having reclassification issues. And they were doing all the right things. They were measuring what they thought was correctly, but they had a lot of overhang on their pallet because of their commodity.
Yeah.
So they were just factoring in a standard pallet size and didn't realize that they need to factor in that 2 to 3 inches that was overhanging on either side, and it was throwing off their classification. And it took, once again, we brought the carrier in. We all got, put our heads together to figure this out, figured out what was going on, if they were off on their measurements and not doing it accurately, and got it resolved. So it can go both ways. Again, the customer wasn't trying to sneak anything past anybody. They just thought they were doing the right thing, and it overlooked, that one detail, but it was impacting their invoicing.
Fantastic. Okay, well, great.
We had another one.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Tony, I'll just throw you one more that sometimes gets overlooked. The carrier can charge the classification of what's on the bill of lading or what's on the actual shipment. And in this case, the carrier was charging the bill of lading. Well, the customer had not sent over the correct bill of lading they sent over the correct bill of lading, didn't have the correct classification number on it. It had a higher classification. So the carrier was charging to the bill of lading, not to the actual product that was being shipped. And obviously, as Brooks was saying, this one was in particular on the customer because they weren't clearing the bill of lading. They were doing their own bill of ladings, and it caused there to be a higher classification on the shipment, so a higher charge to the customer. Caused a little confusion, but we have a freight audit and pay system that we utilize in that specific department. And as these freight audit and pay, as the bill of ladings were coming through, they're the ones that actually caught it and said, well, wait a second, we shipped classification 92.5, but you guys are charged a classification of 150. And so when they went and looked at the discrepancy of the shipment versus the bill of lading, we were able to catch that with our freight audit and pay system and then go back and make the adjustment and correctly charge the customer for the lower classification, which in turn is a lower freight charge.
Great. Yeah, I love to hear the stories because I think somebody can probably relate to at least one of those as well. So
Absolutely.
You guys ready for some questions? We got
it happens more often than you think.
Yeah. I bet. Well, we've got. I asked for questions and I got them. So you guys ready?
Sure.
All right,
Ready.
Here we go. We're gonna do 30 for 30 on ESPN here. Quick of them here. All right, now. No. Well, so the first one is this NMFC is only for LTL, or is it also for full truckloads?
Would just be for LTL.
LTL.
Yeah, the truckload world, really you're buying space and weight there. They don't operate on a classification system like the LTL world does. So yeah, it just impacts your LTL shipping.
Yeah, in fact, I was at where was I? 8HR or Filt Expo recently here, and somebody was talking, and I never really thought about it, but they're talking about a full truckload of some of this material, like some of the non-woven stuff, might be a total of like 3,000 pounds, which is like
Sure.
crazy to think about for a 53-foot truck or something like that.
Sure.
Oh,
Sure.
That's it. Wow, that's crazy. So anyway, all right. So someone else asked, how do we get the updated NMFC list?
Yeah, that's a great question. So actually, we sent this over on your frequently asked questions. This, I believe, is attached to that. At the very bottom, you can contact, it says, how do I determine freight class and NMFC number? So you can call NMFTA directly, and there's a number for that, or we prefer you to contact us, to be quite frank. And so you can click on the Ascent website there, or that little link, and it'll send you to our website. And we have classifications listed. Also, it'll put you direct contact with people like Brooks and myself, and we can answer additional questions that you may have.
There we go. I'm showing it on screen right now. So go to nafahq.org, go to these FAQs, and you connect with the guys here. Thanks. Awesome. All right. So here's another one. Our filters are fiberglass and MERV pleats. What kind of filters are the filter paper in this discussion used for?
That is a great question, and I'm by no means a filtration expert. I looked at it this past week when this was coming out, and it just shows filter stock paper used for filtration. I don't know any other way to put it. That's all that's out there. I really don't know where this application is and what this product is used for in the filtration industry. That's a tricky one to answer. On my side, Matt, you may have some knowledge of it.
I'm with you, Brooks. I don't, because we don't specifically work within the filtration industry itself. I think we're limited to that knowledge. I mean, if transportation, I can help you all day, but specifically as that question, I'm a little caught.
All right, so I'm going to give you guys some homework. Since we've got people shipping the specific media, can you guys go ahead and find some of the specific stuff from your customers that are shipping this? And
sure.
And try
to
absolutely can. And again, I'll ask or I'll tell our people that are asking this question, like, it's a never always situation with a big asterisk, right? Because a certain type of media might most of the time be a certain classification, and other times it might be another based on density, right? Or what the material specifically is, right? So again, I don't know anything about filter paper, especially either. I'm a marketing guy, right? And I do podcasts. So don't ask me, but I do know enough to be dangerous. I would say to say that be careful on that, but we will get you some answers. If you guys would give us some specific stuff, some links, and I can put that back on this webpage. So that our specific members who do ship this stuff have a little bit of an idea. So hopefully that is a good answer.
Sure.
Enough answer for now. All right. So on freight disputes, it's also a good idea to have a current calibration. Oh, this is more of a comment, I guess. On freight disputes, it's also a good idea to have a current calibration certificate to help you challenge the reweight, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So
yes.
Fantastic.
Highly recommend that. I usually tell customers to get it calibrated quarterly because it's immediate something we ask for to dispute any reweight with a carrier. So yeah, if you're doing that today, you're you're well ahead of some other companies out there that don't do that. That's a great practice to have.
All right. Okay, so here's another comment or a clarification here. Wanted to clarify what items these class changes affects: media, wire, paper, die cuts, or is it just for completed filters? And again, that might be another kind of question, another piece of homework that, maybe from what you guys hear.
Yeah, we can dig through, and I guess another way to look at it is maybe look within the shipping departments currently and see what NMFC you're putting on your bill of lading. And if you're using this 150970, that would obviously say, okay, I am utilizing this filter stock paper for an application somewhere. We'll certainly search on our side as well, and we should be able to drill down to companies that are shipping it, and maybe that can help us determine what application this is being applied to.
Absolutely. And so here's a comment, and might be, something maybe you guys can help us out with as well. So it seems the filter paper might be the raw good and not the finished product. Is that a fair assumption, or is it really both, because you're shipping it both ways?
Yeah, the way it looks to be worded in NMFC, I would read this as being a raw material, so to speak, and not a finished filter, because it's calling it filter stock paper, and it just gives a very generic, rolls, package, box, etc. So I think if it's actually a completed filter, you actually fall into a different NMFC, and we can look that up and share that NMFC with you of where filters fall in and give you those breakdowns. That may help as well.
Fantastic. Well, unless there's any other questions, that's all the questions that I see here. Oh, I guess there's one other thing here, and this might be, you guys might know this as well, is how has the pandemic changed the flow of materials out of China? Obviously, a lot of this stuff comes from Asia.
Yeah, so industry speaking, we can definitely say, and I think everyone probably on the webinar today can see, whether you see it through media or social media or anything that you're reading on various websites, we can simply say it has definitely slowed for various reasons, but specifically to COVID-19, it has caused, and understandably it's caused, a lot of reservations to bring that product in. Can COVID-19 be spread across transportation of packages? Can it be spread across human-to-human interaction? Can it be spread across just turning the air on in your house if you had someone that was asymptomatic? There's a lot of questions that we are honestly receiving from our customers, and our partners in this industry are receiving the same questions. And so long story short, or long answer short, I should say, is yes, the transportation industry for importation has definitely slowed, as a lot of this material does come from China. We do see that slowly starting to pick up a little bit on our side, just very slowly. But I would definitely say that there's a lot of reservation in bringing in any product right now, not just from China, but any product globally as we import and export through our United States ports. And it's caused some slowing of manufacturing. But the good news is it seems to show that there is plenty of stock in place for this, plenty of raw goods to create the finished product. And we haven't seen necessarily a complete slow of transportation within the continental United States. Yes, we've slowed a little bit, but not exponentially to where we've seen it fall off the radar. We're still moving quite a bit of freight. In fact, Brooks and I were joking on an earlier call, I believe it was yesterday, we were having, he and I, this has probably been the busiest week I've had at home, this week in particular, with customers just getting deeper and understanding how they're working from home, so how that they can ship freight, how it's meeting the correct classifications of what's coming out tomorrow, and how that's affecting their company. Because this is affecting more than just the Air Filtration Association, obviously. It's affecting multiple industries as we move across various classifications. But we've been able to help them, and it's been a busy week, and you're starting to see people pick up in their shipment of freight, which is good news for the economy of America.
Tony, one other note on that real quick. So I had a call with our international team yesterday, and they're getting approached from current customers that today source from China and are starting to look to source from other countries. They're just trying to get an idea of freight costs from those countries, how easy is it to get in and out of those countries, et cetera. So there's more and more of those conversations going on today than used to be. I can share that with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, guys, this has really been a joy. I've learned a lot, and I appreciate you guys taking the time and helping our members understand some of the pitfalls. All this stuff goes into effect tomorrow. And so I really appreciate you guys reaching out to us, because I just learned about this. You guys have probably known about this for a while, but I appreciate reaching out, letting us know that the changes were happening or are happening, and that we can get this information out to the membership and to whoever's watching or listening to this in the future. So I encourage everyone to look into Ascent Global Logistics. You can find a link to them on our website. There's another webinar that we did a while back. There's an on-demand webinar that you have, kind of goes into the general logistics and some of these things that you want to look for. And so if you do business with them, you're actually helping out the association as well, which we appreciate. If you have any questions or you want to get a free quote, I think you guys will be happy to help them out. You won't take their firstborn. There's no obligation, but I think they'll probably like what I would imagine that they would find that they, probably find something that would help. You'd be able to help them out, and probably in most cases, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Thank you, Tony. We appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Looks like this was helpful. Some people are coming in some good comments, so I'm glad we did this. Thanks so much, guys. You be safe. Have a good Friday, and thanks so much. Thanks. We're talking air filtration with Brooks Wise and Matt Lacy. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
For more information about how the National Air Filtration Association's membership, networking, education, and certifications can improve your career and business, visit nafahq.org.